Hello from Mindset Daily, wishing you a day full of health, peace, and happiness. Thank you for watching the Mindset Daily channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe to support us. Thank you so much.
What if the loudest hate was silent? What if someone's absence wasn't about peace, but punishment? And what if their silence said more than any cruel word ever could? When someone truly hates you, they won't always shout it out or confront you with anger. Hatred doesn't always enter the room with drama or noise. Often, it creeps in quietly, cloaked in silence. It feels like a cold breeze brushing against your skin, sudden, subtle, and unsettling. When a person holds deep hatred toward you, they don't stop speaking because they've forgiven you or found peace. They go silent because they've chosen to erase you from their life without the strength to say it out loud. The truth is, silence can scream louder than rage. It can cut deeper than words ever could. The person who once called you regularly, texted you just to check in, or sat across from you sharing laughter, now disappears. And it's not because they're busy or caught up with life. It's because something inside them has shifted. Their silence speaks of something deeper, resentment, perhaps even contempt. Proverbs says, "He who hates disguises it with his lips, but he lays up deceit in his heart." Hatred doesn't always come with a weapon in hand. Sometimes it arrives with sealed lips and a heart that's gone cold. And let's be honest, it hurts. It leaves you confused. You question yourself. Did I do something wrong? Did I miss the signs? Could I have handled it differently? But the painful truth is this. Genuine hatred often hides behind indifference. People will pretend they've moved on, that they've let go, that they're unbothered. But in reality, they're sitting with a hardened heart, choosing silence not as a form of healing, but as a quiet punishment. They don't seek reconciliation. They won't forgive you. They won't even offer correction or closure. They simply disappear without a word, without a trace. That silence? It isn't peace. It's punishment. And deep down, they want you to feel it. They want you to sit with uncertainty. They want you to wonder. They want their silence to scream what their lips won't dare to say. And let's be clear, that's not love. That's not grace. And it's certainly not godly. It's a reflection of something darker taking root beneath the surface. Scripture reminds us that where hatred is present, deceit is never far behind. That person may appear composed in public, smiling, nodding, exchanging pleasantries. But don't be fooled. The silence is where the truth lives. They've buried their emotions so deep that honesty has been replaced with calculated distance. And here's where it gets dangerous. If you're not grounded, you might mistake their silence for maturity. You might think they've simply grown, evolved, moved on in peace. But in reality, it's often a sign of spiritual erosion, a quiet rot within. Let me tell you something honest and hard. People don't always walk out of your life because of something you did. Sometimes they disappear because there's something in you that unsettles them. Your joy irritates their sorrow. Your peace disrupts their inner chaos. Your growth shines a light on areas they refuse to confront. And rather than deal with that discomfort, they vanish. They punish you with silence because your presence reminds them of everything they're not ready to face. But this is the warning. We must not allow their hidden hatred to birth bitterness in our hearts. That's the true trap. When someone shuts down, cuts ties, and goes cold with no explanation, the temptation is to respond in kind, to give them the same silence they gave you. But that's not who we are called to be. We're not here to mirror hate. We're here to rise above it with love. Now, that doesn't mean we let people mistreat us or walk all over our boundaries. And it doesn't mean we run after them, begging for answers. But it does mean we don't let their silence infect our spirit. We don't let their bitterness plant seeds in our soul. Even Jesus experienced silence. He stood before Pilate and said nothing, not because he was weak, but because he was strong enough to endure misunderstanding. He let Judas come close, kiss him even, knowing full well that betrayal was brewing in his heart. He walked among people who despised him without reason, and yet he didn't retaliate. He didn't curse them. And most importantly, he didn't let their silence define him. He knew what was in the heart of man. So if someone in your life has gone silent, not to heal, but to hurt, you don't need to chase after them for closure. Sometimes, peace is found not in what they say, but in what you choose to release. You don't need to chase them down for closure. You don't need to beg for explanations, because the silence, they've already given you the answer. And sometimes, that silence is not an absence of love, but a loud warning. Sometimes, God allows the silence to echo louder than words ever could, to protect you from what their mouths would never admit. That silence, as painful as it feels, may just be the door to your freedom. But here's the caution: guard your heart, because the enemy would love nothing more than to twist their silence into a seed of hatred in your own soul. Don't fall into that trap. Don't carry their bitterness into your spirit like a shadow that follows you everywhere. Pray for them, even if it's hard. Bless them quietly, even from a distance. And then let go. Let God deal with the parts you cannot touch, the truths they refuse to face. Their silence might be their weapon, but your love, your grace, your trust in God, that's your shield. That's your strength. Some of you listening right now, you know exactly what this feels like. You've been wounded by someone who once felt like home. Someone you laughed with, trusted, leaned on, who suddenly turned cold without warning, who chose distance instead of dialogue. And I want you to know this truth. You are not walking through that pain alone. God sees what they won't say. He hears the words they refuse to speak. And He is the God who brings to light everything hidden in the dark. You were never meant to carry the burden of their silence on your shoulders. You don't need to hold the weight of their rejection in your chest. Release it. Give it to the only one who truly understands it all. Because what they meant to use to isolate and hurt you, God will transform into the very thing that sets you free. Our God is not the author of confusion. He is not absent when people abandon. He is not silent when the world goes quiet. He never withholds His love, not for a moment. And anyone who acts out of hatred, whether through cruel words or calculated silence, is not moving in His spirit. So don't let their stillness define your worth. Don't let their coldness write your story. Let the voice of God rise louder than their silence, more powerful than their absence. Because even when others turn away and fall silent, He still speaks. And here's something to remember. One of the clearest signs someone harbors deep resentment or hatred is not in how they speak, but in how they react to your joy. If they fall silent when you rise, if they withdraw when God blesses you, but suddenly become loud when you stumble, that's not love. That's not friendship. And that's certainly not a heart aligned with the Spirit of God. That's the true root of hatred. It hides behind jealousy and pride. When someone secretly despises you, it's not always in what they say. More often, it's in what they don't say. They can't stand the sight of your success. They can't bear to see you walking in peace, standing tall in purpose, or radiating confidence. And while their lips might remain silent, their absence screams louder than any insult ever could. Their silence when you succeed reveals far more than words ever would. It exposes the bitterness they carry deep inside. Because love, real love, celebrates progress. Love is joyful when others are lifted. It claps even when it's not center stage. Love doesn't shrink in someone else's shine. That's the love God offers us freely. That's the love we're called to extend to others. But hatred? Hatred plays by a very different set of rules. It doesn't want to see you grow. It doesn't cheer when you rise. It quietly hopes you'll fall. If you've ever experienced someone who seemed supportive until you started thriving, who grew distant when you got promoted, who became cold when you found peace, then you've encountered hatred hiding behind a familiar face. People often reveal their true feelings not when you're in pain, but when you're prospering. They may comfort you when you're low, offer sympathy when you're down, but watch closely when you start to rise. That's when a mask begins to slip. Just wait until your light starts shining brighter, until your purpose takes root and begins to bloom. That's when the true hearts around you are revealed. Because some people don't hate you when you're struggling. They hate you when you're whole. Your healing reminds them they're still wounded. Your joy is a mirror reflecting their bitterness. Your success is a spotlight exposing the fact that they chose to remain stagnant while you kept moving forward. Hatred is crafty. It disguises itself as love when you're beneath them, when your light is dimmed. But the moment God elevates you, their disguise can no longer hold. You'll feel the shift. You'll notice the change, the missed calls that used to be consistent, the backhanded compliments, the subtle digs that weren't there before. You'll feel the distance, not because of something you did wrong, but because your growth is something they can't tolerate. They're not upset because you did something wrong. They're upset because you did something right, and it shook something in them. That's what makes it so hard to see clearly at first. You assume it's about a mistake you made, something you said, or something you forgot to do. But in truth, it's not your failure that bothers them. It's your favor. Think about it. When Saul turned against David, it wasn't because David had betrayed him. It wasn't because David was rebellious or disloyal. Saul's hatred wasn't rooted in David's character. It was rooted in his success. What triggered Saul was hearing the crowd sing, "Saul has slain his thousands, but David his tens of thousands." That song wasn't just music, it was a mirror, a reflection of what Saul feared most, being outshined. That same pattern shows up today. When someone harbors deep resentment toward you, it's often not about your flaws. It's about your growth. It's the favor on your life they can't explain. The fact that you keep rising even after life try to break you. That you still smile, still walk in purpose, still find peace after all the battles you've faced. That's what unsettles them. Want to know who really loves you? Watch what happens when God opens a door for you. Pay attention to the ones who cheer when you win, who celebrate when you rise, who praise alongside you when God brings beauty from your brokenness. And then notice who grows silent, who disappears, who suddenly acts like your success is a threat instead of testimony. They won't always say it out loud, but their absence speaks volumes. But here's the truth. Don't let their silence rob you of your song. Don't let their discomfort dim your joy. Their inability to celebrate you doesn't reflect your worth. It reveals the condition of their heart. You don't need the applause of people who secretly hoped you'd fail. You don't need validation from those who can't handle the blessing God placed on your life. When God blesses you, He doesn't take a vote. He's not waiting for public approval. He's looking for obedience, for faithfulness, for someone who will carry the light without shrinking back. And if people choose to walk away when He lifts you, let them. Don't chase what God has already removed. Some of you listening right now, you've been hiding your light just to keep others comfortable. You've been minimizing your own blessing because you didn't want to stir up their envy. But let's be clear, God didn't bring you out of that storm just so you could walk on eggshells. He lifted you so you could walk boldly, freely, and fully in His purpose. He didn't heal you so you could hide it. He didn't restore your spirit so you could live in the shadows, quiet and small, to keep others comfortable. No, God raised you up so you could shine, so His glory could be seen in your transformation. He lifted you, not just for your sake, but so others could witness what His grace can do through someone who refused to stay broken. And let's be clear, if someone can't celebrate what God has done in your life, if they shrink back in silence when they see your joy, it's not because they cared too much. It's because they never truly loved you in the first place. Real love isn't threatened by someone else's blessing. Real love doesn't grow bitter when favor shows up in your life. True love doesn't compete, it celebrates. Scripture tells us clearly, love does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. So if someone grows quiet when you win and loud when you fall, if they act concerned when you struggle but disappear when you rise, you need to pay attention. That's not the Spirit of God working in them. That's the spirit of envy, the spirit of hidden hatred disguised in politeness or false concern. Maybe today your heart aches. Maybe you're still carrying the disappointment of realizing that someone you thought would always be there wasn't. You expected them to cheer you on when the breakthrough came. You imagined them celebrating with you when the blessing arrived. But instead, they vanished. They said nothing. Their silence felt louder than a scream, and it cut deeper than any argument ever could. But let me remind you of something powerful. God saw it all. He heard the words they never said and felt the void they left behind. And in his perfect wisdom, he's already preparing to surround you with people who will love you in your lowest and stand with you in your highest. People who aren't intimidated by your light, but inspired by it. Don't let someone else's quiet bitterness steal your joy. Don't hold back your praise just because their heart couldn't handle your rise. Keep thanking God. Keep shining. Keep pressing forward. Because your life, your healing, your story, it's not meant to make people comfortable. It's meant to glorify the one who brought you out of the fire and into purpose. And here's a truth you may need to face. If they couldn't handle your light, it's because their darkness never truly loved you. Sometimes the deepest kind of hatred doesn't come from strangers. It comes from the ones you trusted most. The ones who held your hand in the beginning. The ones who knew your heart, yet couldn't rejoice when it healed. They smile in public, but behind closed doors, their heart drifts far away. And that's the kind of hatred that cuts the deepest. Not because of what's spoken, but because of what's deliberately concealed. You expect attacks from enemies. You brace for resistance from those who stand against you. But what do you do when the betrayal arrives wearing a mask of affection? What happens when the very one who embraces you is secretly waiting for your downfall? Remember, Judas didn't confront Jesus with a sword. He didn't raise his voice or start a fight. He came with a kiss. He approached under the appearance of love. But his loyalty had already been sold long before that moment. And maybe you've experienced the same. Someone who smiles in your face, while in their heart, they've already turned away. Let me tell you something powerful. When someone harbors hatred but pretends to be your friend, their behavior will eventually betray their true intent. You don't need to chase clues. You don't need to play detective or waste energy questioning every move. Just pause. Stay still. Watch quietly. Because in time, God will always reveal what the human heart tries to bury. That person who praises you in public yet poisons your name behind your back, they're not confused. They're not misunderstood. They're intentional. They're walking in the same spirit that Judas carried. And just because someone stands next to you doesn't mean they stand with you. Physical proximity doesn't equal emotional or spiritual loyalty. What makes disguised hatred so damaging is how it seeps into your spirit slowly. It doesn't scream, it whispers. You start doubting your instincts. You feel a shift in the atmosphere, but there's nothing concrete to point to. You notice the distance, the lack of warmth, but you hesitate to call it out. And in that uncertainty, the enemy sows confusion and doubt deep into your heart. But remember this truth. Real love doesn't hide in the shadows. Love is honest. Love is consistent. Love walks in clarity and truth. It doesn't need a disguise. Someone who genuinely loves you will be the same behind your back as they are to your face. No games. No double lives. But hatred? It creeps in wearing a mask. It flatters when it needs something. It forces a smile when it wants to blend in. It applauds you in public, then undermines you in private. That's not love, it's manipulation. They may sit at your table, smile across from you, and say all the right things. But not everyone seated near you is there to nourish your spirit. Some are simply waiting for the right moment to betray you. You don't need to be afraid of people like that, but you do need to discern them. Because discernment is the spiritual filter that keeps you from being misled by surface-level kindness. Not everyone who says God bless you is speaking from a pure heart. Not everyone who claps for you in the spotlight is standing with you in the shadows. Some people only want access to your life so they can study your vulnerabilities. They come close, not to support your growth, but to find out where you're soft, so they can strike when it hurts the most. That's why it's critical to stay anchored in God's Spirit. Without that grounding, you can be easily deceived by appearances, by charisma, charm, and flattery. But when you're rooted in truth, you won't fall for the performance. Remember, Jesus wasn't caught off guard by Judas. He knew who Judas was from the beginning. He knew the betrayal was coming, yet he didn't lash out or lose his peace. He didn't panic or try to prevent it. Why? Because he understood something powerful. His purpose didn't rest in Judas' hands. It was held securely in the hands of the Father. That's the same place you and I must learn to live from. When people show you fake smiles but carry hard hearts behind kind words, you don't have to match their energy. You don't have to react in anger or sink to their level. Keep walking in integrity. Keep moving in truth. Because what others meant to harm you, God can and will use for good. And maybe that's exactly where you are right now. Maybe you feel the sting of betrayal, that strange emptiness when someone close begins to pull away without explanation. Maybe the words are still friendly, the interaction's still polite, but you can feel it. There's a distance. There's a chill in the connection. And it leaves you asking, what did I do wrong? But hear me, sometimes it's not about what you did. It's about who you are. The favor on your life irritates those who still wrestle with insecurity. The peace you carry shines a light on the chaos they've kept hidden. And instead of dealing with their own inner wounds, they choose to attack you in secret. So don't lose heart. Don't let bitterness creep in. When you find yourself surrounded by people who smile in your face but quietly resent your presence, remember, you're not the first to experience this. Jesus faced it long before we ever did, and he didn't let it stop him. He didn't let it harden his heart or change his mission. He loved fully. He served faithfully. And he fulfilled his purpose with grace, even though he knew that not everyone walking beside him had clean hands or pure intentions. And that's the model we're called to follow. Keep walking forward. Keep showing love. Keep placing your trust in God, even when you sense betrayal is near. Because even if Judas is seated at your table, God still has the final say. Even if a kiss carries betrayal, the cross remains the path to ultimate victory. You don't need to fight back in the way they expect. You don't have to meet their silence with sarcasm or respond to their manipulation with your own. Just stay in the light. Stay aligned with truth. Because if someone can pretend to love you while harboring secret hatred in their heart, then they've already stepped away from the path of righteousness. That's not your burden to carry. That's theirs. One of the most heartbreaking realizations we come to in life is recognizing when someone pulls away. Not because of life's demands, not because circumstances changed, but because something in their heart shifted. And they never told you. They didn't sit down and speak their truth. They didn't give you the dignity of clarity. Instead, they began to fade, gradually, deliberately. They avoided meaningful conversations. They stopped calling. They no longer asked how you were doing. Their silence wasn't just in their words. It was in their presence, in their energy, in the quiet erosion of connection. And let's be honest, that kind of silence speaks louder than words ever could. When someone creates distance without reason, without prayer, without explanation, it's usually a reflection of something stirring deeper within their heart. Sometimes that silent space is not caused by confusion or hurt, but by something colder, something darker. At times, it's hatred, quiet, unresolved, and deeply bitter. And people who carry that kind of hatred, they won't confront you. They won't confess it. They'll simply retreat, leaving you to wonder, while hiding what they really feel behind a wall of politeness and empty smiles. Know this, when someone harbors quiet resentment, they don't always speak it aloud. Instead, they create a silent war. They show up in your life, but not with their full heart. They're around, but never truly with you. You can feel it. You sense something has changed. It's hard to explain, but impossible to ignore. The way they once lit up when you entered the room, gone. The warm attentiveness in their voice, gone. The willingness to share stories, to laugh freely, to simply exist with you in the moment, gone. And yet, they won't say a word. No confrontación, no cloture, just silence. That's how hatred often hides. Not with chaos, not with slamming doors, but with quiet exits. It doesn't barge through the front door yelling. It slips silently out the back, leaving only a shadow behind. And naturally, we try to offer grace. Maybe they're just overwhelmed. Maybe they're going through something we can't see. But over time, the pattern speaks for itself. Because real love pursues peace. It seeks reconciliation. When someone truly values you, they don't disappear. They don't offer cold fragments of themselves and pretend everything's okay. They show up. They speak up. They reach for unity and work toward healing. But hatred? Hatred pulls back. Hatred hides. It takes the once sacred gift of closeness and turns it into a tool of absence. It says nothing with words, but everything with silence. Now let me be clear, not all distance is rooted in hate. Sometimes God shifts people for a reason. Life changes, seasons evolve, but when that distance is cold, deliberate, and devoid of both love and truth, when it's wrapped in unspoken bitterness and lingering offense, then it's not just space, it's rejection. And rejection, disguised as silence, wounds deeper than most realize. That kind of absence is more than just distance, it's punishment. It's silent hostility wrapped in polite withdrawal. You see, the human heart longs for connection. We were created for relationship, crafted in the image of a relational God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. So when someone who once walked beside you chooses to step away without explanation, without conversation, it hurts. It shakes your sense of self. It leaves you questioning, second-guessing, wondering what you did wrong. But let me speak to that pain and offer a reminder. You are not defined by someone else's silence. Don't carry the burden of someone else's unresolved pain. Don't wear the guilt of a heart that has chosen silence over peace, withdrawal over reconciliation. When someone chooses to distance themselves without love, without truth, it's not just emotional avoidance. It's a slow betrayal. It doesn't always shout, but it cuts deep. It lingers in the background, spreading its damage quietly. And far too often, we fail to recognize what's really at work. This kind of distance is one of the enemy's favorite tools. He uses it to divide what God has brought together, to fracture the body of Christ, to tear families apart, to wedge silence into marriages, to dissolve lifelong friendships. And here's the frightening part. Those involved rarely see it for what it is. They say things like, "I'm just protecting my peace," or "I'm doing what's best for me." But let's pause and ask, can there be peace without love? Real peace isn't found in avoidance. Real love doesn't flee at the first sign of discomfort. Love stays when it hurts. Love presses in when it would be easier to disappear. That's the kind of love God shows you and me. Faithful, patient, present. God never withdraws his love to punish us. He doesn't give us the silent treatment when we fall. Yes, he corrects. Yes, he convicts. But he never uses cold distance as a weapon. When we wander, he draws near. When we fail, he speaks truth. When we feel lost, he stays. His love never grows cold. So when someone freezes you out, when they ignore your presence, when they withhold their heart without offering clarity, without extending grace, without seeking peace, don't confuse that behavior with love. That's not love. That's resentment dressed in silence. That's bitterness pretending to be boundaries. And maybe that's where you are right now. Maybe someone you trusted pulled away without explanation. They left a space in your life and never filled it with truth. They just vanished, and it's been gnawing at your soul ever since. You've been replaying the silence, wondering what you did wrong, searching for closure they never offered. But hear this, God saw it all. He heard every word they never said. He witnessed every ignored message, every empty interaction, every moment you were left hanging in confusion. And God does not remain silent about your pain. He is close to the brokenhearted. He draws near to the ones others quietly cast aside. And in his perfect timing, he will bring justice. Not always the kind that humiliates others, but the kind that restores and heals you. Because here's the truth. People who genuinely love you don't leave you guessing. They don't disappear when things get hard. They lean in. They reach for understanding. They try to make things right. Love stays. Love speaks. Love fights for peace. So if someone walked away from closeness and made no effort to repair the break, if they left you with silence instead of truth, then they've already revealed what's truly in their heart. They may still be smiling. They might still smile in public. They might still say hi in passing. But let's be clear, love doesn't ghost you. Real love doesn't disappear when things get tough, and it certainly doesn't punish you with silence. You don't need to chase people who've already made up their minds to stay distant. You don't have to beg someone to be present when they've already decided you're not worth a conversation. Instead, What you must do is root yourself deeply in the unshakable love of God. His love never retreats, never withdraws, never fades when life gets hard. God doesn't leave you guessing. He doesn't leave you in the dark or use absence as a way to inflict pain. His presence is constant, his heart always open, and his arms always ready to receive. When someone chooses silence instead of seeking reconciliation, when they opt for avoidance over truth, they've already shown where their loyalty lies, and it's not with love. You see, there's a form of hatred that doesn't raise its voice. It doesn't lash out with insults or throw stones. It doesn't even speak your name. It simply watches you suffer and does absolutely nothing. Isn't that one of the clearest signs of a darkened heart? When someone could offer support but stays silent. When they have the ability to help but choose to remain seated. When they witness your struggle, your drowning, and still withhold a helping hand. Hatred isn't always loud. Sometimes it shows up in the silence of those who could have acted but didn't. Because love, true love, is not just an emotion. It's a movement. It's a sacrifice. Love sees another person's pain and says, I can't ignore this. I must do something. That's why Jesus told the story of the Good Samaritan. Not simply to teach kindness, but to define what love actually does. A man was left beaten, broken, lying on the side of the road. Two religious leaders walked right by him. They had the time. They had the means. But they lacked the compassion. Their hearts were closed. And while their hands stayed clean, their silence was loud. It wasn't just apathy. It was willful absence. A refusal to act, cloaked in spiritual appearance. And that's a dangerous place to live. Because when someone has the power to help you and they deliberately choose not to, they aren't being neutral. There is no neutral. There's love, or there's the lack of it. There's action or avoidance. And silence, when it could have been love, often speaks louder than any word ever could. When someone you once trusted, someone who claimed to care, is fully aware that you're hurting, there are only two forces at play: love or something else entirely. And when love is absent, something colder takes its place. That something is hatred, though it rarely announces itself in obvious ways. It doesn't always come wrapped in rage or shouting. Sometimes it hides behind a calm, indifferent silence. But make no mistake, indifference can be a weapon too. A cold, calculated weapon that says without words, you're not worth the effort. Your pain isn't worth my time. I see you bleeding, but I won't get my hands dirty. Now, let's be honest. We all have limits. We all experience moments where we're overwhelmed, stretched too thin, and can't be everything to everyone. But that's not what this is about. This isn't about human capacity. It's about choice. It's about the moments when someone you've consistently shown up for, someone you've supported without hesitation, suddenly vanishes when it's your turn to need them. It's when the people who once called you family now say, I'm praying for you, but never lift a finger to help carry the weight you're holding. There's no love in that kind of silence. Because true love doesn't just whisper, I care. It leans in and asks, what can I do to help? Love doesn't retreat when it gets uncomfortable. If someone has the ability, the time, the resources, and still chooses not to act, that choice reveals what truly lies in their heart. Some people will hide behind timing. Some will excuse their absence with vague words or awkward smiles. Some will say, I didn't know what to say, or I figured you had it handled. But deep down, their silence has already spoken louder than any excuse ever could. They've made their decision, and that decision tells you exactly how they see you. Because when someone genuinely cares, they move. Maybe not perfectly, maybe not eloquently, but they'll show up. They'll send that message. They'll knock on your door. They'll offer something: time, presence, compassion. But when bitterness or jealousy sits in the heart, even the smallest gesture of support feels too costly. And maybe you felt that. Maybe you've experienced that moment when you needed just one hand to reach out, and instead, all you found was absence. And yes, it hurts. It cuts deep. Not because you're looking to be repaid, not because you're keeping score, but because you believed love would, at the very least, remember. You believed friendship held weight, that it meant something lasting. But in the end, their silence echoed louder than any word they could have spoken. Their stillness wasn't neutral. It felt like betrayal, wrapped in calm and hidden behind politeness. And if you've ever been there, you know the sting. It's not just the absence of help. It's the absence of care when you needed it most. But let me speak something deep into your soul right now. Just because they didn't show up for you doesn't mean you were abandoned. And just because they turned their face away doesn't mean God did. God is not like man. He doesn't turn a blind eye when you cry. When you're wounded, He doesn't look away. When you're your lowest, He doesn't whisper excuses. No, He draws near. When you stumble, He's present. When you're overlooked by others, He steps in. He catches every tear, holds every heartache, and sees what others pretend not to see. He will never walk past your pain as if it doesn't matter. He won't leave you on the side of the road because He's too preoccupied or inconvenienced. No, our God enters the pain. He walks into the heartbreak. And here's what's even more powerful. He sees those who looked away. He sees those who had the ability to lift you, to speak life into you, to offer help. And yet they chose silence. The Word of God says, "To him who knows to do good and does not do it, to him it is sin." That avoidance, that inaction, that deliberate withholding of support, God sees it all. He sees the motivation behind it, the pride, the jealousy, the bitterness. And He will deal with it, not on your timeline, but in His perfect time. You don't have to carry the weight of their choices. You don't have to chase closure or beg for attention. You don't have to match their coldness or repay their silence. Just stay anchored in truth. Stay grounded in love. Keep walking in grace. And let the Lord be your defender, your vindicator. So stop spending your energy trying to revive relationships God allowed to fade. Stop knocking on doors that were never meant to open again. Don't allow their absence to shape your identity. You were never defined by who left. You're defined by the one who stayed. Keep being who you are. Keep loving deeply, giving freely, serving faithfully. And trust this, what you've sown in kindness, God will return in full measure. Pressed down, shaken together, and overflowing. Because even if someone hated you enough to leave you helpless, your Heavenly Father loves you enough to restore you fully. And friend, there's something profoundly dark about a person who finds joy in your suffering. But God sees it, and He never forgets. You can feel it, even if they never say a single word. It's in the way their smile lingers just a little too long when you stumble. It's in the silence that follows your loss, not out of sympathy, but satisfaction, as if your pain has somehow affirmed something deep and dark within them. And when the crowd rises to celebrate your success, their seat is suddenly empty. But when you're down, when you're broken, when you're barely hanging on, they're there, not to offer comfort or support, but to watch, to linger on the sidelines, as if your collapse feeds something in them. They won't come out and say it, but their heart already has. Because someone who truly loves you doesn't rejoice in your suffering. That's not love. That's not concern. That's resentment dressed in silence. Only bitterness, only envy can find satisfaction in another person's sorrow. It's the kind of hatred that never raises its voice, but makes its home in quiet moments, celebrating every missed opportunity and every painful setback. This kind of hatred hides in plain sight. It's the colleague who claps for you in meetings, but relays your failures in whispers behind closed doors. It's the so-called friend who has all the energy to cheer for others, yet somehow loses their voice when your blessing comes. It's the family member who smiles at your wedding, but secretly hopes your marriage won't outlast theirs. Their words may be kind, their expressions polite, but the heart never lies. And while they might never call themselves your enemy, their spirit tells another story. The Word of God is clear. Love does not delight in wrongdoing. Love does not take pleasure in another's downfall. True love rejoices in truth, in growth, in restoration. But when someone claps inwardly at your pain, whether in silence, distance, or absence, they have quietly shifted their allegiance away from love and aligned with something far darker. That kind of spirit doesn't come from God. It's not born from love, compassion, or truth. It rises from a heart that's been slowly hardened. Hardened by pride, by bitterness, by unresolved offense. And once that seed of hatred takes root, even your moments of pain can become their quiet entertainment. It's a sobering reality. Your struggle becomes their secret satisfaction. Now, let me speak directly to the one who's lived through this. You didn't imagine it. You're being too sensitive or reading too much into things. You felt that cold presence when your heart was breaking. You noticed who fell silent when you were suffering. You paid attention to the ones who watched from the sidelines, not with empathy, but with subtle pleasure. And that realization, seeing people you trusted become spectators to your pain, cut deeper than words ever could. We expect the enemy to come from the outside. We brace for criticism from those who openly oppose us. But when those we once leaned on, those who once shared laughter and life, begin to take pleasure in our collapse, that's a different kind of wound. A quieter one. A wound that whispers, not screams. Hatred doesn't always wear an angry face. Sometimes it looks like silence. Sometimes it looks like absence. Sometimes it looks like a polite smile that hides a heart cheering for your failure. Don't be fooled by the mask. That quiet delight in your pain is not passive. It's a form of spiritual decay. It reveals a heart that has drifted so far from God's love that it can no longer recognize the pain of others as sacred. And if you've been the one on the receiving end of that silent hatred, I need you to hear this clearly. Their reaction to your pain is not a mirror of your value. Their distance, their indifference, their cold withdrawal, it says nothing about your worth, but it says everything about the condition of their soul. There are people who will quietly cheer your failures, not because you've done anything wrong, but because your progress threatened their comfort. Your joy revealed their discontent. Your strength exposed their insecurity. And so they withdraw, they celebrate in secret when you stumble, because it momentarily makes them feel superior. But hear me, this is not the way we were called to live. This is not the heart of God. We were created to carry one another, to mourn with those who mourn, to lift, not to look away, to encourage, not to compete. So be cautious with those who show up in your life only when you're low, but not to help. They come to watch, not to heal. Be discerning with those who grow uncomfortably quiet during your seasons of breakthrough. Pay attention, not just to how they react when you're hurting, but how they behave when you're rising. Because true love doesn't pick and choose when to show up. Real love is steady. It walks with you through the valley and dances with you on the mountaintop. Love celebrates truth without envy. It weeps with those who weep and rejoices with those who rejoice. But a heart that has been secretly poisoned by resentment or hate, it cannot handle your healing. It doesn't know how to clap when you grow. It stays silent, not because it's shy, but because your light exposes something in them that's still wounded. It won't mourn when you suffer, because deep down, it never truly loved you. It only tolerated you when you were broken. But let me speak this truth into your spirit. Even when others silently root for your downfall, God is preparing your comeback. Even when whispers rise in the dark, heaven is making declarations in the light. He prepares a table before you in the presence of those who counted you out, not to shame them, but to remind you that your restoration isn't dependent on anyone's approval. So don't be discouraged by their silence. Don't let their bitterness become your burden. When people take secret pleasure in your pain, keep your soul anchored in truth. Because not one of their quiet celebrations will stop the voice of God from speaking life over your purpose. And please, don't become what hurt you. Don't let their darkness infect your light. Don't return hate for hate. When they celebrate your suffering, don't find joy in theirs. Keep your heart clean. Keep your spirit soft. Let your life be rooted in love, because that is the soil where God builds lasting blessing. God honors the heart that chooses love, even in the face of rejection, even when surrounded by envy, betrayal, or cold indifference. So when others quietly enjoy your pain, when they hide their contempt behind fake smiles, just remember, this battle is not yours to fight. It belongs to the Lord, and He will always rise in defense of those who walk in love, even when they're walking through a battlefield of hate. Wishing you strength, peace, and healing on your journey. May you be surrounded by genuine love, and may your heart remain soft and full of grace. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel, Mindset Daily, for more wisdom to keep you inspired and grounded every step of the way.